Hi fourth graders, Haley here with the Junior Land Stewards. I'm so excited to be doing a flower dissection with you today. So we're going to be going over the different parts of a flower. Today I found this in my garden. It's called the flowering maple, and I thought we could take this apart together. And then when we're done, or you can pause the video throughout and do it with me, you're going to dissect your own flowers too. So let's go over the different parts of a flower. First, at the base of the flower, we have the sepal, which is usually green in color and attached to the stem. Next, we have the brightly colored petals, which attract pollinators. Here we have the male reproductive part called the stamen, and it consists of two separate parts, the anther, which produces pollen, and the filament, which connects the anther to the flower. The female reproductive part is called the carpel and also known as the pistil. At the top of the carpel is the stigma, where the pollen enters the flower. Then we have the style, and next we have the pollen tube, and the pollen travels from the stigma down through the pollen tube towards the ovary. Once the pollen enters the ovary, it can fertilize the ovules or eggs of the flower. Let's take a look at this in real life. Looking at our flower that we have on our table, you can see here the stem at the bottom. The green leaves are the sepals. Then we have the colorful petals, which attract pollinating insects and birds. And inside we have the male and female parts, which we'll take a closer look at. So we're going to start by pulling off the sepals of our flower. We're going to count them as we go. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh my gosh, and as I'm doing this, this liquid is coming out of the flower, which is really cool. It's full of water and liquid. 5. So we've got 5 sepals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we're looking at just the petals. We're going to do the same thing with the petals. We're going to take those off too. We're going to count them as we go. 1, 2, 3. Look at the pollen getting everywhere. I don't know if you can see that. Lots of pollen on this flower. Oops, 4 and 5. We have 5 petals, and they're beautiful. Look at the veins in those petals, really pretty. So here we have what's remaining, and these are where all the action happens, the male and female parts. So as I dissect this, I'm going to get in really close with the camera. Okay, so here we have our reproductive parts of the flower, and my hands are just covered in sticky nectar after pulling those flower petals off, which is kind of cool. I bet the hummingbirds love these flowering maples. So what we're going to do next is very carefully and slowly bisect these parts of the flower. That means we're going to try to cut it directly in half as best we can, so that we can see what's inside and get a closer look. And you know, it's really hard with these small parts to be exact, but we're just going to do the best we can. So here we go. I'm going to zoom in on this. So you can see here we have our male reproductive parts, the anther and the filament. And then we have our female reproductive part, the carpel, which is this from the ovary to the stigma. The stigma is the top. The style is the tube, and the pollen tube goes down inside the flower and connects to the ovary and ovules down here. Move this a little bit. There we go. So what I'm going to try to do, I might need to cut this a little bit more. So I'm going to try to separate these parts out. So now that I've got a cut there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my toothpick. I'm going to slide it underneath this pollen tube. Oh, that's okay. That came apart. That's all right. We can still get our parts out. So here's the pollen tube that connects to the ovary. And then what we can do here is separate this. We can get our female reproductive parts out, just gently pulling them out like that. And there they are. Very cool. And you will have different types of flowers in the classroom than this. Hopefully a little bit bigger, so you can handle them a bit easier. But you'll see, even though all of your flowers look a little bit different, they all have the same parts. They might have a different number of stigmas. Some only have one. They might have a different number of anthers and filaments, or the stamens. They'll have a different number of petals, possibly. So it'll be fun to observe and compare the flowers that you have in the classroom with those, with the other students in your class, but also with the one that I have here. Can see here that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe more of the stigma and styles. You can see where it connects to the pollen tube right here. The pollen tube goes down. Here's where we severed it by accident. Goes down into the ovary, connects to the ovary. You can see the ovules inside the ovary, those little round things. So the pollen goes from the anther to the stigma, travels down through the pollen tube, and fertilizes the ovaries, the ovules down there. So next we're going to get out our worksheet and put all the parts together. So we thought it might be fun to have a little worksheet, and we can either do this on a separate piece of paper, or you can put these directly into your nature journal. You can use a little bit of tape and tape them inside your nature journal so you can go back and look at them later, or show them to your families, or even take the time to draw them, because they'll just forever be in your nature journal. We'll see how those turn out. That would be really fun. So we can document in our nature journals or on our worksheet how many of each part we found, what color it was, and stuff like that. So here we have our sepals, our petals. These are our male reproductive parts here. And these are two sections of our female reproductive parts. We have our stigma and style. We have our pollen tube and our ovaries and ovules here. And this connects down into the stem, as you can see. So now that you're done putting all the flower parts in your nature journal or completing your worksheet, let's take a closer look at these flower parts through our microscope. I have this really handy little microscope. You can turn a light on it so you can see things really well. And what I did is I made slides and I took pictures through the lens of the microscope so that I can show you what I found. Let's take a look. important to remember when doing this dissection that not all flowers look exactly the same. So you'll have a flower that probably looks a lot different than the one that I have, but they all will have the same parts. We'll just have to use our detective work to find those parts. And you may have some of the same flowers as your classmates, or there may be some different ones. So you could have fun with it and compare and contrast, or you could work together to be detectives and find these flower parts together. Good luck and have fun!